Hi, I'm Gesa Ziemer. I'm the director of the City Science Lab in Hamburg. We've been here since 2015, so we have been one of the first city science labs in this great network. And I'm very excited that we are still here. So we are like 30 researchers in our lab, and we have hosted the City Science Summit in 2019. And I know how it feels to be the host of this great conference, so I'm happy that it takes place in Taipei now. And we just released this wonderful book here from our City Science Summit, and there are a lot of contributions from a lot of team members, researchers from our great network. So have a look at this book. It has just been published.
I'm here with Dava Newman, the new director of the MIT Media Lab. Welcome.
Thank you.
To our 5th annual City Science Summit that we call Cities Within. So first of all, what do you see as unique and interesting to you about the Media Lab?
Oh, thanks, Ken. I'm so glad to be here. The Media Lab, what drew me in is, I think it's just the most creative, transdisciplinary lab at MIT. And then people are pretty action-oriented, so we want to be also offering up solutions to everyone and with everyone. With your work especially, it's the co-creating.
With respect to your own personal research interests, what are you most passionate about?
Right now, personally, in terms of research, as you might know, I'm a rocket scientist, so I've always been thinking literally about moonshots and getting humanity to become interplanetary. What does that mean? We are going to have humanity going to the moon and Mars. I really have to say the most important thing I can be thinking about is climate and living in balance and harmony with all of humanity. We're all astronauts because we all live on this spaceship together. So right now, thinking a lot about climate and sustainability.
Yeah. You know, cities account for something like 70% of the CO2 emissions on the planet. In fact, I have come to believe that we will not address climate change unless we find a new model for cities. I wonder if you agree with that.
I do, because you've taught me well, but I love how you title it Cities Within.
Yeah.
So it really is thinking about within our urban environments, and if there's 1 billion people now and that climbs to 3.5 billion, then that's a game changer. So what we do at the Media Lab is how can we have the most societal impact?
Yeah.
Well, then this has to be the key to climate, because we're talking about billions of people. We are probably at a tipping point. How do we reduce emissions? How do we worry still about quality of life, access, all these things? And well, we can do that within cities. That's what I'm so excited about. They're kind of new, novel ways to look. We'll need to change behavior, but then we need new creative technologies and solutions, systems solutions.
There's kind of two camps that I see, or at least at the extremes. One says that we have to change behavior, we have to dramatically reduce consumption. At the other end of the spectrum, there are people that say, well, energy use is going up dramatically, it's very difficult to change behavior, we should just build a bunch of nuclear reactors and just focus on the supply side.
Absolutely, we need to change behavior and reduce consumption for the developed world. For the developing nations, the energy usage is in the rise, as it should be. Right? The vast majority of people live within 100 kilometers of the coast. So to me, look at it holistically, thinking about the ocean systems and climate, because that's where the sink is. That's what's absorbing so much of the carbon now. So I think we have to think of Earth subsystems, ocean, land, air, and it's really, kind of the whole cycle of climate. Yeah. But what's the right mix? So it seems like a really big challenge. People get overwhelmed, I know.
Yeah.
But what you're doing is so fantastic because you're offering solutions, co-created. People can move the knobs and dials and say, oh, if we do this, here's the change. If I can do this. So I think that's really empowering
Yeah, though I think that's exactly right. I mean, people do get really overwhelmed, but I think there are things that people can do in their local community that, if scaled globally, could make a big difference.
Yeah, I think that's where we start. Your idea is about in the community, empower people, give them options, show them, that different future. I think everyone's going to be on board. And then I really do believe in kind of the test beds and the great examples. So let's do it here in Cambridge. I know you're working with your whole, all your communities, international communities. But if we just start, and you've already started, of course, these great examples, then there's going to be a lot of followers. Say, hey, they can do it in Cambridge, Mass. But where else? Good, they can do it in Shanghai, right? Can we do it in Bangkok? See really good examples, and that's another way to really scale it.
Let's talk about one detail. So, top priority of the current administration is a transition to electric vehicles. There's another alternative, which is to get rid of commuting, for example. I mean, a huge source of CO2 emissions is commuting. Surveys of the young people working in all the tech companies in Kendall Square would love to live within a few-minute walk of where they work.
I love the idea. No one probably really wants to commute. So if you have the services and you can walk to work or bike to work, that is so convenient. And it's much more social. It's much more social if you're spending all your time commuting. You're not necessarily having coffee or enjoying a walk around the river. So I think this hits. It is a changing human behavior, but all for the positive, and the benefits are for quality of life really increases. Maybe it's going back, right? Back to the future, because we're going past. Because that used to be a lot of living in a village community, a real community. And I think we have lost that sense of community, and I can't wait to get it back.
Well, building housing for faculty and students and staff on or near campus is not a priority for MIT. Do you think it should be?
Absolutely. I love to envision a state where our community, our academic community, that we could be co-located. But boy, to pull in researchers and staff and faculty and everyone, that would be something, because that would be the entire community would really thrive, I believe.
What is the role of design with respect to what we've been talking about?
Yeah. So everything's about design, right? We have to design the framework, literally design the systems. There's the physical design as well. I think there's kind of the data and the information, to me, that all revolves around design. Then there's the literal, physical design, if we talk about communities and being able to live together and live in close proximity. And then there's the aesthetic part of design I need to mention as well, because if we're talking about quality of life and living together, the aesthetics are so important. The designers need to be included in the discussion right up front, because we know when that's not the case, things can be not designed well, and human use, human interaction, usability. So all those case studies and incremental design, I think, are really important.
What is the role of education and learning at the Media Lab in terms of these grand challenges that we all have to face?
Yeah, so the education piece is first, just the knowledge piece, the education piece, and doing it, problem solving. That's usually when students are at their best. It's not so much discipline oriented, it's the grand challenge, climate, and you bring students together from very different backgrounds. We're fortunate, that's how we kind of have the students from all different backgrounds and offer up the problem, climate. And we also, our nature of the students, they're makers and they're doers. So give them the problem, but let them get their hands dirty, literally. Let them get their hands dirty and say, how would we go about this? And this generation of students, they get it. So that's the good news. We're not convincing anyone. Students are usually ahead of us, in my experience. So the students are out there, but we're like the coaches. We're trying to say, what about this scenario? What about that scenario? And so I'm optimistic. I think that the leadership, climate and health, will come from our students. It'll be our students now, the future generations. It means that we have to help lead now and help facilitate the education, bringing the communities together.
So data is the fuel of just about everything we're going to do, and a lot of the best data related to human behavior is locked down by corporations that use it for their own proprietary interests. How can we get access to such data that can be used for the public good to solve some of these societal problems?
That's a great question. When I was at the government and NASA, we were very proud of our open data initiatives. They were huge, and that's exactly what government should do. Open data is public, it's paid by for the taxpayer. So we do have a large open data movement from the government. Of course, open source, the open source movement, and at the media level, so we've always been really proud about that our data is open. And so I think it is a conversation with industry as well. Let's have that conversation. That's a tough conversation, but let's say we see the whole Internet of Things, but using the data for the benefit of humanity, and that necessarily means that we want it to be open and open access. And so I think it is incumbent upon us to work with our industry colleagues to see where we can get to the happy medium. Yep. Surely, I envision hybrid systems that are mostly open, 80% open. We're sharing data. All the climate data, of course, should be shared. Most of it's collected by the governments, world governments. Okay, if you need to lock down for security and other reasons, you might need to lock down a platform, but I think that's 10-20%. So I do see really, platforms that really have open data architecture.
Mm-hmm. Problems in places like Boston are challenging enough, but even more challenging, in my opinion, are the billions of people who live in informal settlements without access to housing, good housing, clean water, communication, sanitation, etc. What technology or systems or ideas from NASA-related work could be used to solve these problems in the informal settlements?
Thanks. It's great to think about informal settlements. Again, this is billions of people, and then it wouldn't be obviously, well, what does space technology have to do with it? But it's such a great question, because some of the solutions to make informal settlements really thrive is not, we know this, it's not to replicate the electrical grid and what we're doing in other urban environments. So it calls for innovation, calls for us to be really creative, because those are probably new solutions. Those are new evolving solutions that work within the informal settlements. So now thinking about space technology and data, say clean water would be my first great example. We do closed loop life support systems in very confined environments in space, on International Space Station, getting ready for Moon and Mars. So water, we need really 100% closed loop systems. So the water filtration, clean water, every liquid up on space station, and I mean every liquid, all your coffee, all your extra, everything from the bathroom, all the liquids, those are totally recycled. Guess what? It comes out as drinking water. So just the water filters have been scaled, and the Earth application is fresh water. So you can go in one of the dirtiest rivers or water sources, put it through really advanced filters, and get out clean water. Now your question, how do we scale that? How do we democratize it? How do we give that technology to everyone? So I think that some of these technologies, though, from space are really important for informal settlements, because they're small, they're compact, we have to get them less expensive, and we have to make sure we have billions of them. But when we talk about water and power, same thing now when we talk about power generation, it's not just extending the grid, it's like, no, what are the own little microgrids there, and what are the power sources? You and I have talked about a lot. Sure, there's renewables, and solar works a lot of places, wind works some places, but nuclear, what about, maybe people don't know for space, how do we get to Mars? We do use nuclear batteries. That is part of space. And they have to be safe, of course, but these are really high density, powerful, and I think of it as, again, kind of mobile and modular. So you can bring things to the places that you need them.
So how do we adapt and scale NASA technology to be used for informal settlements? Yeah,
well, that's where the commercialization comes in from. A lot of those, even the government patents, a lot of the advanced technology. The great thing about, for NASA, those technologies for water filtration, a lot of the sensing, they are open, and actually in the tech portal we can just go to, and companies, new startups, lots of our students, they can come and actually have that technology. A lot of those patents are for free. The government's already paid for them, but government doesn't commercialize things, so it's a great opportunity for young entrepreneurs to come along and say, that does look like a great technology, and here's how I would love to use it in, say, our example of the informal settlement. So that's, I think, kind of the opportunity that lies ahead of us.
Yeah.
How do we take some of that technology, how do we commercialize it and scale it, in an affordable fashion?
Yeah. Do you think we can do that here at the Media Lab?
I hope so. We have a jump start on it with our E14 fund. That's really what we're trying to do. We're trying to take a look at the great ideas from the lab. As soon as our students are our alum, and think about, okay, these are great ideas. We have more great ideas that we can definitely fund, but some of them are going to change the world.
Well, climate, back to climate, it's what do you think is the Media Lab's unique contribution to climate research?
I've been thinking about that recently. So what can the Media Lab do? For the Media Lab specifically, I love our idea of the hyper-local. So we're about the world. We're about serving the world, and globally, from my perspective as a space person, the global perspective, we have the satellite data. But then when we get down to it and have a conversation with people, it's that hyper-local. Locally, what can we do? We're showing people lots of different options, moving the sliders, tweaking the dials, moving the knobs, as I say. And that's really at the local, this hyper-local focus. And we have to have the global, holistic perspective to say, we're all on this spaceship together. We're all crew. My crewmate is you, my crewmate is in Asia, my crewmate is in Europe. But then when the work gets done, I love, again, kind of your idea and articulation of the hyper-local. I think we have this decade to try to get this right. Then 10 years hence, we'll say, yeah, we got that right. We moved the needle. We brought the communities together. We looked within and came up with some of these solutions. So I hope that's the journey that we're on.
Exciting.
Yeah.
Thank you, David.
Oh, thank you.